Hi friends. Please subscribe and help me get my first 1,000 subscribers. It's one click for you, but for me it's a huge encouragement and motivation. Thank you to everyone who has already subscribed. I hope you enjoy this story. Let's go. James stared blankly at the screen of his MacBook Pro for the 100th time. His inbox was empty, his Slack channels were quiet, and there were no fires to put out, but instead of relief, he felt a gnawing anxiety in the pit of his stomach. In the kitchen, Emma was making a racket, preparing dinner in what felt like a suffocating silence. When he stood up and walked into their compact, modest kitchen, typical for a starter home in the Denver suburbs, everything looked normal on the surface. She was wiping down the granite cutting board, her lips pressed into a thin, grim line. "Emma," he started carefully. "Everything okay? You've been kind of somewhere else for days now." She did not turn around immediately. When she finally did, her eyes, usually bright and full of life, looked dull, almost gray. She tucked a loose strand of hair behind her ear and offered a smile that did not quite reach her eyes. "Yeah, everything's fine. I was just thinking about us," she said, her gaze drifting past him. "Us?" James asked, trying to keep his voice steady. "Yeah, us. James, do not you feel like we just stuck? Like we in a rut? It's the same thing every single day, work, dinner, sleep. It feels like I am reading the same page of a book over and over again, but I can never turn it." James frowned. This was not like Emma. She was usually the rock, the one who embraced the grind of their daily routine without questioning it, without complaining. He took a step closer, a cold shiver tracing its way down his spine. "Do you want to change something?" he asked cautiously. Emma lowered her eyes, as if she were afraid her next words would trigger an argument or a shutdown. "You know, I was thinking that maybe we should try something new." Her voice was quiet, but there was an unfamiliar steeliness to it. "New? Like what?" James felt a low-level tension building in his chest. Emma took her time answering, weighing every syllable. "Do not take this the wrong way," she began, raising her hands in a peacemaking gesture. "It's just. I've heard about couples who do these little, let us call them games. They meet up with other people, flirt a little, tease each other. Just to shake things up. It's just a game, you know? Like a lifestyle thing, but light." James blinked, completely thrown. It always amazed him how Emma could present the most out-of-left-field ideas with such disarming confidence that they almost sounded rational. But right now, he was at a loss for words. "Light flirting," he clarified. Emma nodded quickly. "Yes. Nothing serious. Just, let us try meeting up with another couple. We'll drink some wine, have a few laughs, flirt a little bit, and then we come back home like nothing happened." She suddenly looked him dead in the eye, her face full of sincerity and hope. "I really think this could help us." James furrowed his brow. It sounded bizarre, but at the same time, he saw something in her eyes that stopped him from shutting it down immediately. Emma had seemed genuinely miserable the past few months. Maybe this would actually bring about a change, if only for her sake. "Okay," he finally said. "But nothing serious, all right? We just try it." "Of course." Emma exclaimed, her face lighting up with relief. "It's going to be fun, I promise." James watched her rush to finish dinner, practically dancing in place near the stove. It was the first time in ages he'd seen her in such high spirits. And even though a shadow of doubt lingered in his gut, he kept his mouth shut. Emma was happy, and right now, that mattered more than his own discomfort. They did not discuss it again over dinner. Yet, there was something new in the air, a buzzing, anxious energy that made James wonder, did I just make a huge mistake? James raised his wine glass, clinking it gently against Emma's, and then with their new acquaintances, Lucas and Olivia. The aroma of expensive Cabernet filled the air, and the dim, recessed lighting of the living room created an almost intimate atmosphere. Lucas was cracking jokes, Olivia was laughing a little too loudly, and Emma was smiling. Everything seemed perfectly normal. On the surface. At first, James felt stiff. The whole concept of light flirting, the reason they had set this whole evening up, made him feel awkward. But he tried to loosen up, participate in the banter, find the right timing for a joke, all while watching Emma enthusiastically bounce off Lucas's energy. She seemed alive, animated, as if she had shed the heavy weight of their daily grind. At one point, Olivia, laughing hysterically, launched into a story about her recent trip to Paris. Suddenly, Emma cut her off mid-sentence. "Oh God, Paris. I dream of going there," she said with a new, strange sparkle in her eyes. Her voice sounded softer, huskier than usual. James raised an eyebrow but stayed silent. He had never heard Emma talk about Paris with any passion. Or about travel at all, really, if he thought about it. Lucas jumped on the topic immediately. He and Emma started obsessively discussing cobblestone streets and cozy cafes in Le Marais, while Olivia just smiled and nodded, sipping her drink. James felt a pang of exclusion. Emma seemed entirely focused on Lucas. Her laugh was getting a decibel louder, her hand unconsciously brushing her hair back. She was reaching for her wine glass more often than necessary, even though she was usually a slow sipper. James tried to insert himself into the conversation, dropping a comment here and there, but Emma barely acknowledged him. She did not brush him off rudely, nothing overt, but it was enough for him to feel a strange distance. She was not doing anything explicitly wrong, but her vibe had shifted. By the middle of the evening, James could not ignore the transformation. Emma was leaning in closer to Lucas. Her smile was wider, teeth showing. Every now and then, their eye contact lingered a beat longer than polite conversation required. James saw it and tried to gaslight himself. "I'm just imagining things, this is just part of the game, right? This is why we here. Anyone want a refill?" Lucas asked, suddenly interrupting the flow. "I'll go," Emma offered, standing up so effortlessly and casually that James did not even have time to object. "I can grab some fresh glasses too, save us a trip." "I'll help you," Lucas said, flashing a charming grin. Too much to carry for one person. And before James could get a word out, they both headed for the kitchen, leaving him sitting at the table with a smiling Olivia. He let out a breath, trying to hide how much that stung. Just getting drinks. Just getting drinks, he repeated mentally. Emma and Lucas disappeared around the corner. Olivia started rambling about some project at her work, but her words sounded muffled, like she was speaking underwater. They did not register. James heard the clinking of glass from the kitchen, then a low murmur of voices, followed by a short, heavy silence. The internal alarm bells started ringing. What is happening in there? But he immediately reeled himself in. He felt like she had been laughing too much. Staring at Lucas too long. But that was just his paranoia, right? James clasped his hands together, forcing himself to look calm, but his heart was hammering against his ribs. Olivia was droning on about spreadsheets, while he strained his ears, trying to catch a single word, a single sound that would explain why Emma was taking so long. The next morning, James woke up as the sun was already cutting through the blackout curtains. Usually, he was the first one up, brewing the coffee, scrambling eggs for two. But today, the rhythm was off. Emma was not in bed. The coffee pot was cold and empty. The bathroom door was shut tight, and he could hear the faint sound of running water. She must have been in there for a while. "Emma," he called out, cracking the door open just an inch. There was a thin edge of worry in his voice. "Yeah, I'm almost done," she answered, her voice quieter than he was used to. When she finished washing up, Emma walked out of the bathroom wrapped in a fluffy towel, barely glancing at her husband. Usually, she'd give him a quick peck before breakfast, or at least brush her hand against his arm as she passed. Not today. She threw on her robe and headed straight for the walk-in closet, eyes fixed on the floor. "You okay?" James asked gently. "Yeah, everything is fine," she replied too quickly, like she had rehearsed the answer. She looked away, freezing for a second in front of the rows of clothes, then added, "Just a little tired from last night." James nodded, but something about her tone, her movements, put him on high alert. He watched her slowly thumb through her t-shirts, as if agonizing over an outfit for a lazy Sunday they were supposed to spend at home. Emma was usually decisive. She was not the type to waver between shades of gray. Today, everything was different. When she walked out of the room, leaving him alone in the stillness, James suddenly realized he could not recall her face as she passed him. He remembered the flow of her hair, the lingering scent of her vanilla shampoo, but her eyes? No. It was as if Emma was actively dodging his gaze. The sensation was almost physical, a heavy weight pressing down on the room, her silence, her guardedness. James forced himself to pick up his Kindle, trying to lose himself in a thriller, but his mind kept circling back to her, looping like a corrupted file. Throughout the week, the anomalies started to pile up. Emma was staying late at work more frequently. Before, she would text or call, venting about a project that ran over, but now her updates were vague, and the calls stopped coming. If James asked what she was doing until 8 o'clock, her answers were slippery, rehearsed. Got stuck with the team. We had a little brainstorming session that dragged on, she threw out one evening, eyes glued to her iPhone. Then I stopped at Whole Foods. You said we were out of coffee. But you did not bring anything in, he pointed out, glancing at her empty hands. Emma shrugged, unbothered. They did not have the roast you like. I'll check somewhere else tomorrow. The next morning, she left the house 40 minutes earlier than usual, mumbling something about an early client meeting, even though James knew her firm did not open its doors to clients before 9. Later that afternoon, he swung by her office in low dew, using a forgotten travel mug as an excuse. The receptionist, a chatty woman named Sarah, looked confused. She mentioned that everyone else had trickled in at the usual time, but Emma had not swiped her badge until nearly 10. She mentioned she had a personal appointment this morning, Sarah offered helpfully. James just nodded, thanked her, and walked out without asking for clarification. Then there was the gym. Another red flag. Emma, who had never shown the slightest interest in fitness, suddenly started disappearing in the evenings for spin class. She'd leave with a Nike duffel bag, but when she returned, she did not look like someone who had just sweated through 45 minutes of high-intensity cardio. Her hair was dry, her makeup intact. Her explanations were becoming brittle. "Stop interrogating me, James," she snapped one night when he asked why the class ran late. "I just want to get in shape." Is that a crime? It sounded hollow. The playful tone she used to have was gone, replaced by a defensive edge he could not quite define but definitely felt. His gut was screaming at him. One evening, Emma left her phone on the quartz kitchen island while she went upstairs. The screen lit up. James, walking by to grab a glass of water, glanced down. The sender was not a name, just a number he did not recognize. The preview text was short, but it hit him like a physical blow. "Thanks for yesterday. That was amazing. Round 2? He reached for the phone, his hand trembling, but before he could unlock it or read more, the screen went black. James set the device back down as if it were radioactive. A dull, heavy pressure began to expand in his chest, making it hard to breathe. Suddenly, a thought crossed his mind. Check the bag. It was not in his nature to snoop, he respected her privacy, but something inside him snapped. He needed to know. He opened her purse, expecting to find the mundane debris of daily life, gum wrappers, old receipts for gas, maybe a stray lipstick. What he found was far less innocent. Buried at the bottom, tucked underneath her planner, was a neatly folded restaurant receipt. James unfolded it, hoping to see the name of a sandwich shop or a coffee place. Instead, the logo at the top read La Belle Vie. It was a high-end French bistro downtown they had talked about trying for their anniversary but never booked because of the price tag. But here it was. Time-stamped yesterday. 2 entrees. A bottle of Pinot Noir. Dessert. James sank slowly onto a bar stool, clutching the slip of white paper that suddenly felt like it weighed a ton. The question spiraled. Who was she with? Why lie about it? He remembered her excuse for yesterday. She said she was buried in paperwork until 7. She lied. James felt the foundation of his trust cracking, a slow, sickening sound like ice breaking underfoot. When Emma finally came downstairs, he was waiting in the living room. She paused, surprised to see him sitting motionless in the armchair without the TV on. "Why are you sitting in the dark?" she asked, dropping her bag on the side table. James did not speak. He simply lifted the receipt and held it up. Emma froze for a split second, her eyes widening, but her recovery was instant. "Did you go through my purse?" Her voice wavered, shifting instantly to offense. "Emma, what is this?" His voice was low, controlled, but laced with a dangerous undercurrent. She looked at him, then at the receipt, then back at him. She shrugged, feigning indifference. "It was just lunch with a colleague. We were discussing a project strategy." James frowned. It was a lazy lie, and he could not hide his disbelief. A colleague? At La Belle Vie? With a bottle of wine? Emma, that's an anniversary dinner, not a work lunch. And I did not even know you were going there. Her face hardened. She looked away, tucking her hair behind her ear, a nervous tic she could not suppress. I do not have to report every single move I make to you, James. You know that. And, it's not what you think. It was totally innocent. Innocent? Then why did not you tell me? Why am I finding out about this by accident? Emma fell silent, biting her lip. For a fleeting second, he saw something in her eyes that looked like desperation. But then she straightened her spine, putting up a wall.
I'm tired, James.
You re-interrogating me like I'm a criminal, and there's no problem here. Tired? You re-dining at 5-star restaurants with someone else, lying to me about where you are, and that is no problem? Are you serious, Emma? She turned to walk into the bedroom, but James moved quickly, stepping into the doorway to block her path. Emma, we are discussing this. Right here, right now. She stopped, but refused to look at him. The silence in the room was thick, sharp enough to cut.
No, James.
I do not want to discuss anything. Her voice sounded dull, like she was using every ounce of energy to keep it together. You've already decided I'm guilty, have not you? So what's the point? I have nothing to say to you. James felt something inside him snap. He did not scream, he did not raise his voice, but his words sliced through the air like a knife. Just tell me the truth, Emma. Stop the games and just tell me the truth. She turned back, meeting his gaze, but the confidence was gone from her eyes. She shook her head slightly, and without saying a word, she pushed past him and walked out of the room, leaving James standing there, feeling his world disintegrate around him. James stared at her back, feeling the anger rising inside him, hot and suffocating. Unable to hold it back, he took 2 quick strides, catching up to Emma in the kitchen. She was standing there, methodically jamming dirty plates into the dishwasher as if nothing had happened, her movements mechanical, detached. She was not just trying to avoid the conversation, she was trying to escape herself. Emma, I'm serious, his voice was sharp, cutting through the noise of clattering china, but underneath the edge, there was undeniable pain. What the hell is going on? She slowly pushed the rack in and closed the dishwasher door. She straightened up, took a breath, and finally turned to face him. Her face was a mask of exhaustion and alienation. You want the truth?
Fine.
The truth is, I got bored, James. Everything got bored. We got boring. It was as if the confession uncorked a pressure that had been building for years. Emma continued, not giving him a chance to interject. Do you even remember the last time we did something together? Something real? It's just work, house, work, dinner. Day after day, the exact same loop. I just wanted something else. Something new. James felt his blood boiling. Her words felt like physical blows to his ego, dismantling his entire concept of their marriage. He stepped closer, his jaw tight. So you went looking for something else behind my back? His voice grew louder, his breathing ragged. Did it ever cross your mind to, I do not know, talk to me? To tell me what you were missing? Instead of... He could not finish the sentence. Every word he wanted to use felt dirty, tainted. Emma rolled her eyes, her patience evidently evaporated. Talk? And what would that have changed? Would you have suddenly started surprising me every day? Planning romantic candlelit dinners? Would that have brought the spark back? We both know the answer is no. You too, stuck in your ways. We stuck. And I just wanted to feel desired again. With those words, Emma tried to step around him, but James caught her by the arm. Her words did not just hurt, they gutted him. He searched her eyes for something, remorse, regret, any flicker of the old Emma, the woman who had stood by him when they were just starting out. But all he found was fatigue. You could have just left, he said quietly, finally releasing her arm. If you were that miserable, you could have just said so. Why did you have to do it like this? Why? Emma did not answer. She stood opposite him, her gaze cold and empty. In that moment, James realized, this conversation would not change a thing. His trust was already demolished, and her words, like shrapnel, were embedded in his mind. He backed away toward the window, feeling something inside him finally shatter. James stood by the window, unable to tear his eyes away from the gray cityscape of Denver sprawling out before him. A cool draft pushed through the cracked sash, but he did not bother to close it. The silence in the apartment was deafening. He turned around, scanning the room, and his eyes landed on Emma. She had not moved, but her shoulders were tense now, her hands clasped tightly together. "I have nothing else to say to you," she said softly, turning toward the hallway. Her footsteps sounded hollow, as if she were not walking on hardwood floors but stomping on his internal turmoil. She grabbed her North Face coat, sliding her arms into it slowly, then picked up her purse from the coffee table. James remained by the window, making no move to stop her. He just watched as she headed for the front door. She did not look back. The latch clicked, the door closed, leaving a faint echo in the entryway. James stepped away from the window, sank into the armchair, and buried his face in his hands. It felt like the room had emptied out the moment she left. The air felt different, heavy and stale. It suddenly became crystal clear that the conversation was over. Permanently. Everything that could be said had been said. Now all that was left was to sit in this silence, stare at the closed door, and try to figure out what to do next. James sat in the armchair, staring at the door Emma had just disappeared behind. She had not slammed it, just closed it quietly, leaving a slight draft in her wake. Silence reclaimed the room, broken only by the rhythmic tapping of his fingers on the armrest. He stared at a fixed point on the wall, not noticing the evening light fading outside. Time seemed to have frozen, leaving him stranded with his own thoughts. Her forgotten phone was still sitting on the quartz countertop. He remembered how, just days ago, seeing that unread message had sent him into a spiral. Now, looking at the black screen, he felt a strange, numb relief. It did not matter anymore. He did not want to guess, did not want to build theories or play detective. He had all the answers, and they were exactly what he had feared. James stood up and walked into the living room. Their photos were still hanging on the wall, smiling faces on their wedding day, that camping trip to Rocky Mountain National Park, the anniversary dinner at the steakhouse. These images, captured moments of their life, now looked distant, like stock photos of strangers. He did not want to take them down. He did not want to box them up. Let them hang. Let them remind him of what used to be. He felt a strange, almost masochistic satisfaction in the thought. He went back to the bedroom, sat on the edge of the mattress, and leaned forward, resting his forehead in his palms. It seemed like every word they had exchanged, every argument, every excuse she had made, was now playing on a loop in his head, crashing over him in waves. He felt something inside him collapsing, but with the wreckage came something new, a harsh, cold clarity. His phone buzzed on the nightstand. A Slack notification from a coworker reminding him about tomorrow's 9 a.m. stand-up. James swiped it open, typed a quick generic reply, and tossed the phone aside. Work, deadlines, the daily grind, it all seemed so alien now, as if his life no longer fit inside those small boxes. Everything that used to feel important now looked small and meaningless. He did not know exactly what tomorrow would look like, but he knew one thing, it would be different. The room had grown dark. Shadows stretched across the floor, climbing the walls. James stood up and clicked on the bedside lamp. Soft, yellow light filled the space, but it felt empty. There was something terrifying about that emptiness, but also something liberating. He stepped out onto the small balcony, inhaling the crisp, thin mountain air. Below on the street, people were walking by, laughing, talking about their plans. He watched them, unable to comprehend how they could just live so simply. But then, he felt a light, almost imperceptible sense of release. For a brief moment, he felt that there was something ahead. The future, which he had been so afraid of losing, now seemed inevitable, but not quite as terrifying. He looked out at the lights of downtown Denver flickering to life, trying to extract one simple answer from the grid. What now? But instead of an answer, a single thought surfaced. Tomorrow, I start over. He did not say it out loud. He just turned, walked back inside, and closed the sliding glass door. And that concludes our story today. Thank you for watching to the end. If you liked it, please give it a like and leave a comment. Also, we are always happy to discuss any comments you may have. See you in the next video.